if you're still wondering after keynote, how's the pronunciation of the paleontologist friend of the keynote speaker, it's Grzegorz, and bear with me now, Brzęczyszczykiewicz. You can, of course, find a YouTube video with that, so please Google it and you can repeat it yourself. There is a German officer who tries to write it down, so that's awesome video. I recommend it. Old school Polish comedy. All right. How many of you have a Facebook account? Please raise a hand, guys and girls. Awesome. This guy, this innocently looking guy, could hack and take over your Facebook account. My Facebook account, I think it's around 1 billion Facebook accounts, just by knowing the email or a mobile number of yours, just to take over your account. What he found out was, I think, the most spectacular example of the missing rail limiting bug, which is a bug characteristic for API. So bear with me, I will discuss it in a bit more details. The problem was in the reset password procedure. You have to ask Facebook, I wish to reset my password, and he will send you a 6-digit code either to your phone or to your mail. You have to put it down just to set up new password. So usually, and what he did here found that after you try to brute force that number, the site will block you after a few attempts, 3, in this case 10 or 12. But moreover, that he found out that 2 domains were missing this protection. So that's why he was able to brute force that and to get the valid values without a problem, just by brute forcing the 6-digit, which is not difficult to brute force. Luckily for all of us poor Facebook users, he is the good guy. He reported the bug to the Facebook Bug Bounty program. This is the response he got, $15,000, which is, I think, a quite nice bounty. Also, he got quite a media coverage. As you can see, close the bug that could unlock any user's account. You have to have an email or mobile, but still, he got quite a media coverage. So what's the reason for this talk? Why I decided to talk about REST API? There are several reasons. I think first is that it's everywhere, behind almost every web application, behind mobile applications. The trend is somehow growing. A REST API is being added to existing applications as well. And more and more companies allow to use its API. And nowadays, if you develop software, you don't have to write yourself everything. You can happily use, for example, for sending emails. There are a bunch of services which, at this moment, will do it better than you if you will start from scratch to writing that. So you just buy those services, you just get API key, and you integrate it with the API. Systems are getting more and more interconnected. There are no more standalone database browsers, right? There are many connections there. Also, software developers follow trends similar in fashion, and one of the current trends in software development is microservices, which are a bunch of small services with API. They expose API, they use APIs for other services. So this trend is growing. They told me once that nice talk should contain a reference to Gartner, so here it is. You can see that Gartner predicts that in 2018, which is, I think, quite soon, more than 50 business-to-business communication will go through some kind of, they call it web APIs, but I think most of them will be done by REST API. From the security perspective, the more API, REST API code means the more API bugs. So this is the last, I think, argument to talk about REST API. All right, so a few words about me. My name is Mateusz, and I work in a Polish company called Securing. We do mostly web application, mobile application security assessment. Also, we help software as a service companies to cope with security-related issues on each stage of software development. Moreover, I'm a member of OWASP Poland. We recently organized our first OWASP Day, so if you happen to be in Poland next year or you wish to speak, please submit a CFP form I encourage you to do that and to visit Krakow, or even if the next Poland Day, OWASP Poland Day, will be in Warsaw. Before I started my career in security field, I was a developer, a software developer, and my first encounter with security was by actually fixing bugs which were reported to us. And one other thing, that when my kids and my wife fall asleep and I'm happily still awake, I do some bug bounties. Here are companies. I found some bugs in it. All right. The agenda for the talk. First, I give you just a glimpse what REST API is, how it looks, how it works, and then we'll get through steps related to pentest or to bug bounty approach to finding bugs in API, which I recommend to use. If not mentioned anywhere else, all examples, most of the examples are based on my experience as a bug bounty hunter. So let's move on. What's REST API? REST means representational state transfer. API is application programming interface, and that's it, basically. I'm not going to describe in detail the architectural constraints behind REST API. What I wish you to remember that REST API is a successor, basically, on all web services and all the SOAP stuff. REST API messages exchanged between client and the server are easy to read. They should suffice to determine the state of the objects represented in that message. What is more important? Data is usually sent as JSON. It can also be XML or HTML. And HTTP methods have the meaning, mostly. So there are flame wars on internet, which is more restful than, which API is more restful than the other. But in general, as you can see here, get is for getting the information. Put is for replacing all, or either all data of the object or the whole collection of the objects. Patch is for updating certain properties. Post just usually creates a new entity, and delete is, So maybe example, here we have get requests, so we wish to get a version details. We have an endpoint, which is version. We don't send any parameters, but if we do, we would put here the same stuff as here, and here is the response from the call, and we have some details related to API endpoint named version. All right. In case of REST API pentest, it should be straightforward. Usually, when you're dealing with a web application or mobile application, you can see the calls to the API just by looking at the traffic. Sometimes in a mobile world, you have to get through some layer of encryption, some additional layer of encryption over the HTTP post message body parameters. You cannot see them. There are some way encrypted, and you have to take that encryption out just to see what parameters are exchanged in the API. All right. So basic steps. One other thing. Sometimes you only test the API without prior knowledge of the application. So then I recommend to start with getting endpoints, which is URLs basically to the API methods, getting the docs to understand how the API works, getting some sort of keys or credentials just to authenticate your calls to the API, and get sample calls and get sample responses. Because why is that important? Sometimes there is let's say, bad validation, and you put some values as parameters, you put some parameter values, and you don't know really what causes the error. So it's better to get the proper values. That's the best case scenario when we all get all these data. But my experience from bug bounties, sometimes you don't know there are any endpoints there. Sometimes you don't have docs. Sometimes it's public API, so you have docs, but sometimes you don't. No keys credential, of course. Sometimes no sample calls as well. So I will just now go to all steps to get those information in order to start to testing, to fuzzing those calls. All right, we'll start with finding endpoints. My usual starting point is that my tool for finding subdomains tells me that there is a new domain in scope of one of the bug bounty programs, and the root path returns on, or HTTPS or HTTP returns 404 not found. And I have to somehow decide if there is something on that server or it's just empty. So I start with finding a, let's say, root API path. You can see here, I think, most common ones, paths. Maybe let's go to examples. You can just check, you're checking those paths, and sometimes it goes like this. We have here something, 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 .wio/API/v1, and here it is community platform API v1. So I think it means that we are at the right track. We found the right place, and now after v1/ we can put names, which are described in a minute, of the endpoints. Next example, even better than the previous one. Here it is. We found API endpoint, and this is nice message, says that this is all list of all endpoints, and we can have, here is only one, but still you can, sometimes it's a lot of more. You're sure that this is all endpoints available at this particular version, because this is the version, yeah? V1 could be V2 here and another set of endpoints. Sometimes this approach doesn't return anything, so I recommend to combine it with this. Ping, health, and status are most common endpoints, which are usually available without any authentication, so you can just call ping or health, and you can get some proper response. Proper, I mean other than 401 or 403, forbidden. For example, ping. If you send ping, you expect to get pong in response. That's proper response for ping, so it means that we are at the right place. We got pong, so it means that here, at this depth, we should search for another endpoints. All right, health, I think, is more popular. Here we see health, and the status is good, which is quite fine. Sometimes we can get an error message, which will say that unknown method, requested method health. So I think we are at the right track. We just got the wrong endpoint name. So still we can brute force the health, replace it with something else, and try to check based on that message if we hit any other error message. All right, health. Another example which got me interesting mainly because it contains TNT admin app, whatever that means. And I got interested. I Googled status.app in capital letters, and I found that it's related to Spring Boot Actuator. So now it's the story of Spring Boot Actuator. Maybe I should start with which is Spring, but let's go with Spring Boot. Spring Boot is a tool which helps you to rapidly develop Spring applications. And what is interesting from this description is the last part. It provides a production-ready features such as metrics, health checks, and externalized configuration. Similar information is in Spring Boot Actuator, which is some kind of sub-project of Spring Boot. And here we have, it adds several production-grade features, services. So let's see those interesting endpoints. This is the list of endpoints of Actuator, not complete, but I think the most interesting ones. First, Actuator just gives you the whole list of endpoints available. Health, we've seen an example before. Traces, what trace does returns you the list of all recent HTTP requests where you can find cookies or API keys. This is what it does. Log file is similar. It returns you recent entries in the log file. Metrics returns you some metrics related to the web application or the performance of the whole server on which the web application is running. From the metrics, sometimes you can get also the API endpoint. And heap dump was most interesting for me, so now is the story of heap dump. What heap dump returns is actually a compressed H-profile, which first time I was dealing with heap dump. I deducated from the Google that it's some kind of memory dump, so I used Eclipse Memory Analyzer, and let me just show you. I have it somewhere here. Here we have a histogram, which lists types available and this heap dump, a number of instances in the heap dump. And I think about string, finding string. Maybe it should be interesting string, but I couldn't, certain string I couldn't match with anything, so I went with the byte array. And here, hopefully you can see they're part of, oh, sorry. You can see that it's 401 unauthorized. You can see part of responses from the server on the heap, because heap is the place where Java stores objects, basically. So everything which will be represented as object, for example, HTTP requests will end up here. And let me just move it a little bit when things got really interesting for me. Yeah. For example, I think when I select this, you can read it, but it says M2 domain cookie private key prefix. For example, let me just see. I have one screenshot if I won't find it now. Should be there some passwords and keys. All right, just let me go back to the screenshot. I have it right here. Yeah, it's just you can read. Sorry, M2 IMS service token client and the value. Some kind of M2 model DB root password, whatever that means, rowhouse 55. That's the password. So every entries, configuration entries were on that heap. And we got it all with the use of only one unauthenticated call to the API. All right. When we found the endpoint list, we should try to get sample calls. Some of them are quite easy because only get requests without parameters, but some of them require some parameters, so we have to somehow be able to call them properly. So we start with finding docs. Here is the list of most popular paths to get the docs. I will start with application.wadl, which is a successor of WSDL, Web Service Description Language. This is Web Application Description Language. And just let me show you an example. This is the SOAP. Oh, sorry. This is the SOAP UI, which I usually use for web service evaluation, but still you can import this file. Let me just find it. Yeah, we have some example WADL file. I can show you also, it's an XML description similar to WSDL files. It's, yeah, you can read that, but it's better just to see SOAP UI. And here, let me select one call. Hopefully, it will work. Here we can get a whole HTTP request. This is the config mobile Yahoo something, vfreak status, and sorry. And we can all play request and bang. Hopefully my internet connection works. Should. I don't have the proxy set up, but I checked, it should work. All right, we get some response. Yeah, we can see, maybe raw would be best. We got some status information. So this is the tool which allows you easily produce HTTP requests from the description of the, in the WADL file. Another example, once I managed to obtain the whole PDF specification of the API, which I checked later, it wasn't publicly available. So that was the nice hit because it gave me all the details of how the parameters are composed, what I should enter there. One of my favorite tools is Swagger. Any of you use Swagger or used? All right, it's just, I think for me, it's the easiest one. You just put API key and you browse through the API. Let me just show you. I have it here. This is Adobe this time. This is usually you put here in a key. You can see version info controller. Let's say we have a get request version, and we can see that so it doesn't require any parameters, so we can try it out. So let's try it out, and it returned a nice version. Maybe I can show you something with parameters just to be sure. Oh, maybe post. Yeah. Here we have to produce some parameters, collection ID, whatever. And here we can click and just to present those parameters, the same parameters as well. And at the end, there is a trade out. And we also got here in the response, unable to validate token, which is normal response I would expect because I didn't send any token. All right. Let's get back to slides. Of course, most of the tools I plug into Burp, which is HTTP proxy, and I grab requests and responses, and I fuzz API requests from Burp or from Zap or whatever you wish to use. All right. So we got the docs. If we still didn't find any documentation, we can, for example, first approach would be to use error messages. So first error message. This API really wishes to help you. You made some error in the request, and you have requested this URI, but did you mean, and they gave you exact propositions of which endpoints you should check next. So I like that. I didn't know they exist. Here also I have parameters to use, so that's nice. Another example would be, I just send some get request to REST v1 out, and it says method not allowed. All right, I will select post and do the same. Could not find username parameter. I like that. I can add username parameter. Could not find a password parameter. All right, here we go. And this message I understand. It means that I selected parameters correctly, just I didn't hit the values. Here I can recommend you the approach of the paramet tool. If you try to brute force parameters name, look for the change in response length and response status. This tool does exactly this idea, implements this idea. So if you hit, as you can see here, hopefully password and username is the same length, but if the names will be different, you could see different length of the response. So it means that something changed during your brute force. You can also use the same approach for example, from Burp to deal with parameter names. In case of the web applications, I recommend JSCAN tool, which is PHP tool to scan and analyze JavaScript files to get you from there to extract API endpoints. At least go and see the regular expression there, which is used to extract those endpoints. If you are dealing with a web application, you can also try to search for a JavaScript file, which are sometimes stored in popular location, or just the location of the JavaScript file can be predicted. In case of mobile application, it's the same. You can also dissect a mobile application to analyze its code. And there is an app for that, which is APK scan, which is like something like similar to VirusTotal. You upload your APK file, and it will analyze its content against malware, if it contains malware. All links of all those tools I mentioned are at the end of the talk. You can grab slides, and they're there, so you don't have to write those names. All right. Finding keys. In case of keys, there are two places you could find. We are still in the mobile environment, so you can check the mobile application. I think one of the most spectacular examples is from 3 years back. Guys made a tool, Play Drone, which crawled all apps from the Google Store and checked for the storage for hard-coded keys. And I think Airbnb was the most interesting example because stored keys for Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, Microsoft, and Yahoo. So having that, you could present yourself like a regular Airbnb application for the Facebook, for example, to post comments as users. And the second place is where you should look for keys is GitHub. There are several tools to crawl GitHub. You can also query it by yourself. You can ask for some string and it will give you, I think with Equifax someone done that, just to show there are there. You can scan all public repositories of a company, if it has any, and also remember this company, if there has a public repositories, it has some developers there, so also scan their repositories. Maybe someone saved his token there. For one example, here is a sample commit. You can see that here's a minus, which is the change that this line was removed. And here is the exact value, 053 and something something of the access token. And here is replaced with the way it should be done. It just takes the environment entry with a given name. So it was they had the public API, so I went there and checked, and this is the way you check token. So what was interesting, that token, yeah, is still active, and its role is, of course, administrator. Sometimes Travelhawk leaves you with a lot of output to analyze, but you can find there gems like this. So I really recommend just to play to check what things can be found. Now I wish to give you two more examples from my experience. First one is Yolokia, which is another unprotected endpoint similar to Actuator. What Yolokia, this is the response, casual response to Yolokia. If it's not protected, it returns some stuff like that. Agent, protocol, configuration, and so on. What is Yolokia? It's basically a REST-like interface to deal with JMX, which is Java Management Extension. So maybe to give you an example, this is the operation. You can see I mentioned that GET requests usually only pull the data. This is, here we can see write. So this request actually change some property. This is the entity, which is a connector of the Tomcat running on the port specified. And what this operation does is just enables a exploit by request. Why I did that? Because the reason is there was a production application. I didn't want to close the connector down. I could have done that the same way, like this. I just wanted to share simple proof of concept that it's possible. I can switch it on, switch it off, and the header, as you can see at the bottom, appeared. What's most funny in this case for me, that there is also a way to perform operations. I mean, by calling functions exposed, you can, this is the exact documentation, and you can see at the bottom, you can call garbage collector just by using this API, which is nice. It's designed to do that, but you shouldn't leave it unprotected, shouldn't leave it anonymous access to that endpoint, because I think that garbage collecting is a resource-consuming operation, so calling that many times could just broke the app and cause DOS. All right. Last story, which is a little bit different from the previous examples, because it's not from my bug bounties experience, but my job. I'm not allowed to disclose any details, but I think you will find the story interesting. Imagine a form, some web applications you're logged into. You have to fill some form, for example, to renew your driver's license or something like that. You fill some data, and you have to wait to put some kind of, let's say, national ID, your national ID, to populate the form automatically after you solve properly the CAPTCHA, to autocomplete the form with your data. It's your name, address, whatever the hell is in the database. So you have to put your ID, solve the CAPTCHA, and then the form gets the data. Yeah, on this moment, everything is normal. This application was secured. You couldn't circumvent CAPTCHA. You couldn't resolve more than 3 CAPTCHAs because you were getting logged out, and it was difficult to automate that attack. But the REST API was quite a legacy app those days, and REST API was added on it, straight on the database level, because they wanted to do the same from the mobile app. So ta-da, new mobile app, no CAPTCHA on mobile, no rate limiting. So now you could brute force. Anyone didn't think that adding REST API in mobile app changed anything in the threat landscape of this app. So basically, you can brute force now, and yeah, as I mentioned, that's the client, so you don't sell the data, because imagine driver's license data, the size of the data. We reported that to client as a critical one, because they had the protection on the web API, but not on the mobile. Someone, I don't know, they didn't communicate. Sometimes another team does the mobile than the web app. All right, to sum up, I discussed how to find endpoints, how to find docs, either they are public or you have some paths to check. I discussed how to find sample calls, how to get keys. In case of fuzzing, if you have sample calls obtained, the fuzzing is similar in the way you do it for web application. So I didn't dive into that. But these are the steps to start assessment, either security or you do bug bounty or pen test of a bug bounty of a REST API. So, questions? One thing I want to add that those lists, you saw a few entries, I'm gonna release on our GitHub if you wish to use them. There were not extensive ones, those to find API root or API methods, but still it's a start. If someone of you wish to cooperate on that, please find me at the conference. We can talk and discuss the cooperation. So now I take questions. Just one, maybe. Oh, sorry. That's just the light. Yeah, please.
Did you turn the garbage collector into a remote code exec?
No. No, I thought it should be somehow could be possible to do, but I didn't. Yes, but it's on my list to try to, because you can do that from, for example, we have Tomcat console, right? You can do that there. I didn't find any obvious way in the internet to do that. I tried to analyze the available options, because you get, if you hit Eulokia, you get all the endpoints, all the calls available, but it's a huge list, and I didn't manage to find remote code exec. And at least it wasn't obvious. It wasn't similar to the one you can do with the usual setup, with the old way, let's say. All right, I understand what you mean. Unfortunately, no. I haven't seen a standard that would describe how to handle API keys, how to, for example, get those obtained from the web application itself, because somehow you have to get those keys, how to exchange them, how to revoke them. I'm not aware of the standard how to approach it. That's difficult. I recommend to analyze how GitHub does it or the big players does it. But you won't find any simple description. You can only see how they do it, just by using it. That's it. No standard here. It's very, very difficult area, and everyone is trying to find some sort of solution to the problem.